Cameron Crowe and Sally Hetherington here. We're going to be talking about Sally's experience at Cole Valley Christian, and I'm really excited about it because I think you're the first teacher or
Really?
past teacher. Yeah, I'm really excited. I hope we get lots of teachers, so I hope this is the beginning of a pattern. But before we get into it, I will provide some context if this is anybody's first video so they know what we're talking about. So a little over 2 months ago, I wrote a blog post, and this is the blog post. And I had been reflecting on my Cole Valley memories. I went to Cole Valley Christian School for 13 years, from kindergarten through senior year, and I graduated in 2008. And when I left, I had only positive feelings and nothing bad to say about the school. It was really good to me. And as I left that environment and I got exposed to more ideas, I started thinking differently. And over time, I realized those memories were actually not as kind of pure and healthy as I think I thought that they were originally. So I had some strong feelings that I wanted to share, and I wrote this up, not because I thought it would lead to anything, but just because I wanted to get it off my chest, and I wanted a perspective to be shared that I thought wasn't really being shared. So this exploded. There were like people that were really upset by it, people that were so thankful that I wrote it. And we created a support group on Facebook for people that wanted to share their story but weren't comfortable doing it publicly. And dozens of stories later, we made this into a more official thing. We started this website, colevalley.speaks.com, started doing interviews such as this one. This is where all the public interviews go that anybody can view outside the support group. And we realized that it was good to get this stuff, to talk about this stuff and process it and heal from it. That felt really good, but we realized that these appear to still be problems, not just from when I was a student, but from students that just graduated or students that are currently in Cole Valley. So we realized it's not enough to just, say what happened to us, but we should do something about it. We should try to prevent some of these bad things from happening to other students, either that are there right now or will be there in the future. So we decided to write what we called the joint statement. And this was over 100 hours donated from over 20 people. And it's a long document, but we took quotations from different stories and we put them in categories of issues. And we summarized the themes and we proposed recommendations or proposed solutions to some of these issues. And since we posted it about 7 weeks ago, we've been trying nonstop to talk to the Cole Valley Christians Administration. So far, they have more or less ignored it and have not met with us publicly. We are trying everything at our disposal to meet with them as a group, and have so far been unsuccessful, but hopefully that will change soon. So that is the context. So Sally, will you tell me, how did you come across this? Was it the original blog post or something afterwards? And kind of what did you think when you saw it?
I believe I saw it on my daughter's / granddaughter's Facebook page and read through it and thought, oh my goodness, this is wonderful. It's about time.
Wow. Okay. So was anything in there shocking, or was it all stuff that you were used to or you had seen regularly, or what?
It wasn't shocking. It was unfortunately what I had seen, what I had experienced, through my daughter. And yeah, I wasn't surprised at all. Not at all.
So what's your background with Cole Valley? You were a teacher and you have a daughter and a granddaughter that went through Cole Valley, or?
No. Okay, so first I wasn't a teacher. I was a teacher's aide.
Got it.
First in first grade for 1 year, and then for almost 5 years in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And no, the daughter slash granddaughter that I'm talking about is my custodial granddaughter. I raised her from the time she was 3.
Okay.
So I don't know how to refer to her.
I was like, wait, what kind of age category are we talking about right now? No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
Okay, um, so you, so your granddaughter was, how many years did she go through it? So I'm just trying to get a sense of like how many years of either direct or indirect experience with Coal Valley you have.
We were involved with the school from 3rd grade until the end of her sophomore year, except for half of 3rd grade and all of 4th grade, when she and I had to move back to Oregon due to a custody battle, and I had to homeschool her, during which time the elementary campus was very supportive in helping me homeschool and giving me the right assignments and that kind of thing, so I could keep her up with her classmates.
Got it. So, so you agreed with a lot of the things that you read in the blog post. Like what in particular kind of stood out to you, if anything, from your personal experience that matched?
The LGBTQ plus comments really resonated with me. The last year that I was there, and I don't remember doing this before, but that last year that I was there, when I had to sign my contract, there was a statement in there that said that I believed that marriage should be between one man and one woman. And I tried not to answer that question because I don't believe that. But when I tried to turn my contract in without it, it rejected it. And I had to check it, even though I didn't believe it, because I didn't want to lose my job.
Wow. So why do you think, so this just kind of happened all of a sudden? Like what, do you know why this change happened?
I don't know. See, that was the 2014-2015 school year. So maybe it was, well, I know that the Supreme Court in 2015, in June of 2015, decided that same-sex marriage is the law of the land, that anybody can marry whoever they want to, as long as they're, of consenting age.
Right.
So maybe that's why it was added to the contract, because I don't remember it being in the contract prior to that.
It's interesting because it's almost, I mean, depending on your views, you don't agree, but like, I think that it's like moving backwards. So like society was kind of moving forward and
yes,
and towards more of a position of, we're more accepting, more loving people. It's not our business what other people want to do, whether you think it's wrong or not. Like, you don't get to decide what they get to do.
that's right.
And then Coal Valley like tries to take a stand against it in their contract. That seems, I mean, it sounds like them, but it's especially bad.
Yes.
It's like, it's not only just standing still, it's going backwards to me.
Yes, I agree. Several steps backwards.
Right. So why was this something you didn't want to sign?
Because I don't believe that. I don't believe that homosexuality is a sin. I don't believe that even if somebody does believe it's a sin, that someone should be legislating what somebody else is doing in their love life. I don't think that's anybody else's business except for the two people involved.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to sign it.
Yeah. So what do you, I mean, how would you respond to, I'll pretend that I'm a Coal Valley administrator and, what's not clear about the Bible? Like why, of course it says, man should not lie with another man or whatever these verses are. I don't remember exactly, but how do you respond to that person?
Well, I've done a lot of in-depth Bible study, And when those passages were written historically, homosexuality at that time was not understood to be an orientation like it is now. I mean, science has discovered since that our sexual orientation is something that we're born with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something that we choose. I cannot choose to be homosexual. I am
Mm-hmm.
heterosexual, and I can't change that.
Mm-hmm.
And those scriptures at the time period that they were were written in a society where homosexuality, and it was all men, lesbians weren't even known about at all, because back then women had zero rights. Women were just considered property. So, they were just some man's property. But any homosexual activity that was done was primarily between like masters and slaves. And so that makes sense that, in my mind, God would not want someone of power to abuse someone else who is subservient.
Yeah.
That to me is just another example of rape, which
Right.
of course God is opposed to.
Mm-hmm.
He created sex to be a beautiful thing,
right.
not something forced.
So has this always been your opinion, or did you used to think that homosexuality was a sin and something changed?
No, for the most part, I think all my life I've been rather okay with it. I've had a lot of LGBT friends, and I knew people well, and I knew that many of them loved God, and I couldn't quite reconcile, well, if it's so bad, then why can they love God so much? It didn't make any sense.
Right.
What I was experiencing in my life didn't match up to what I was being taught at most of the churches that I was attending.
Mm-hmm. Do you, not to make you speak for anybody else, but do you think this caused any anxiety or discomfort to any other teachers or teachers' aides that you knew of?
Not that I'm aware of. I know the other kindergarten aides and I, when we would, stand out at recess and, supervise the kids as they were out at recess, we would do a lot of talking. And because that was an issue that was coming up before the Supreme Court, it was kind of a hot topic.
Mm-hmm.
And when I told them that I was really hoping and praying that the Supreme Court would say, yes, you can marry whoever you want to marry, they all kind of looked at me like I was from outer space.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if there was like a, underground gay affirming teacher base in the elementary
right.
school.
Yeah,
Not
like that I'm aware of, but I haven't been there since March of 2015. So, we can keep our fingers crossed. Maybe there's an underground now.
And for the most part, when we've had interviews and we've been kind of reflecting on our time at Coal Valley throughout these interviews, people for the most part think the elementary school is like fine. Like it's like most of the, I think the pattern seems to be most people are like, I don't really remember very much like kind of judgmental, hateful stuff going on in elementary school. It really was in high school when they started, cramming that down our throats. But what's your take? Because you spent so much time in the elementary environment. Was there more judgment than we remember?
I honestly don't know for sure. However, when my granddaughter started going to school there, the principal and vice principal from them, and I was only on staff with one of them. The for 1 year, the year I was in first grade, I think, as a teacher's aide, not when I was in first grade. Yeah. And then when I moved to kindergarten, a new principal came. The other principal retired, and a new principal came. And that was when I began to see a lot of things really change. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like what? That sounded like you were starting to say, give an example.
Yeah, well, one of the things that changed, and it was just not a good, what's the word I'm looking for? It didn't work out well for kindergartners. Kindergartners, they're 5, and some of them turn 6 during the school year. They're very, very little. For many of them, it's the first time they've been away from mama or daddy. And what they need is to be in one place with one teacher where they can be nurtured, right? I mean, yeah, it's okay to give them some academics, but primarily these are, they're almost babies,
Mm-hmm.
And they need to have kind of a substitute mom or dad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with the new principal, everybody, there were 3 kindergarten classes, and one kindergarten class was for math, one was for phonics, and one was for writing. And every day that was a mandatory day, and that's another thing in itself. Rather than go to school 5 days a week, the kindergartners had to go for 3 days a week. And then they had the option of not going 2 days. So there wasn't consistency, but so math, phonics, and writing. And every day the kindergartners would move classes like, you do in junior high and high school. And in kindergarten, it would take us 5 minutes to get them lined up to go to the next class. Once they got to that next class, it would take 5 minutes to get them settled down. And then we would have the instructional time, and then we'd have to stop early so we could get them lined up again, and it would take 5 minutes. So, every day there were 30 minutes at least of wasted time. And the kids just felt like they were bounced around all over the place. Now, granted, they didn't know the difference, because kindergarten for most of them was their first school experience.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it was very disruptive to their little lives.
That was a new policy with the new principal.
Yes.
Do you remember what the rationale was? Was this like a new kind of theory that in academic literature, or was this just a new idea that they had, or?
From what I remember, they were trying to make it so the teachers didn't have to work so hard. So the teacher that taught math could only teach math. She didn't have to teach phonics and writing also. And the same for the ones that taught phonics and writing. They didn't have to prepare everything. But from my perspective, it didn't work out that way.
Gotcha. I want to go back to something you mentioned about kind of the history of the Bible passages about homosexuality. You mentioned that at the time, women were considered men's property.
Uh-huh.
To what extent, if any, is that, are there any lingering kind of gender differences that you noticed in Coal Valley?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Now, at the elementary campus, it's almost all women, so it wasn't so much of an issue. But I know when my granddaughter moved to the secondary campus, immediately there were restrictions put on her as a girl as to what she could or could not wear. And she was for something that she and I both thought was completely appropriate to wear to school, But the boys, could pretty much wear whatever they wanted, or that's what it looked like.
Do you think the big issue with this is just that they were more strict to the girls, or that they were actually, some people have talked about that they gave these girls really unhealthy ideas of kind of sex and sexual power, because the dress code was meant for them to control these temptations that the boys were feeling. Like, it's their
Right.
fault if they are
That's right.
causing them to stumble or something.
Yes, that's exactly right. It was portrayed that it was all the girls' fault. In fact, when my granddaughter was, I believe, in 8th grade, her Bible teacher gave them an extra credit project to do. And I can't remember the name of the woman that designed these bathing suits, but they were one-piece bathing suits, and she was talking about the evils of wearing a bikini. So my granddaughter was trying to approach this extra credit project as, now wait a minute, there's nothing wrong with a bikini. And she approached it from the standpoint of course you're not going to wear a bikini if you're going to go to prom. You're not going to, it's just not appropriate. But if you're at the beach, or if you're out at Lucky Peak or Eagles Island, then it's an appropriate thing to wear. And I was so proud of her, because she wrote this whole paper saying how the whole passage where it tells women to dress modestly, that word modestly also means appropriately. So no, I mean, it isn't appropriate, to go bowling in a formal, an evening gown. That's just not appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of this paper that she wrote, she quoted Jesus as saying, and this is a paraphrase, but when a man looks at a woman with lust, he's already committed adultery in his heart. Jesus didn't put any responsibility on the woman. He left it all up to the men.
Good for her.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. So what was the response to the paper?
There really wasn't one. I guess she got a passing grade on it. And he said that however you approach the paper wasn't going to affect your grade. You were going to get points just for doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, it might have put her on, and maybe even me, on some kind
of
a
list. Yeah. Hit list.
Yes.
So yeah, that's kind of, my next question was going to be about, this is kind of like taking a little stand against the, maybe unfair policy of the school in a small way. And do you think there was a environment where it was encouraged to kind of stand up and speak your mind and kind of critique at Coal Valley?
No, I didn't feel that way when I went to work, and I know she didn't feel that way. In fact, just last night or the night before, she was telling me about in her, I think again, 8th grade Bible class, she and 2 of her friends would sit and listen to some of the things that the teacher was saying and just shake their heads because they didn't believe it. But my granddaughter, being who she is, she was not one to be outspoken because she doesn't want to be attacked. I don't want to be attacked. Nobody wants to be attacked,
right?
Especially when you're 12, 13, 14 years old.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So do you think that they're, whether they encourage or not, what it sounds like they didn't really encourage standing up and speaking out on things. But do you think they supported kind of critical thinking, that you should be kind of questioning these things, whether you make a stand about it or not, you should consider for yourself?
No, no. The environment that I saw was more of, this is what you need to believe, no questions asked, just believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to think for yourself. And in fact, I remember hearing people say, and I couldn't pinpoint which campus it was at, maybe both, but I remember hearing people say, oh, you can't ask God why. And, I'm standing there thinking, why not? He's a big God. Certainly he can, he can handle a few whys.
Yes.
We want to know. So ask why.
Right.
Like you're asking me.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that always bothered me about this kind of, no, there was something wrong with you if you were questioning. That's kind of how I always felt. And to me, that never made sense to me, because I was like, if this is all true, and I'm honest, and I'm like, with an open heart questioning, then I'm just going to come right back to it, because it's going to be true. So like, there's nothing to lose from questioning, right? Like, if anything,
right.
it makes you more confident in what you
Right.
believe. So
That's right.
but I didn't feel like that was the message I got. I felt like it was like, you're kind of crossing the line with that question. That was like not fully a interpretation question. That was like a maybe this whole thing doesn't make sense question, which is not okay.
Right. And if it doesn't make sense, then let's answer the question in a way so it can make sense.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, don't just try to shut it down. It's like, is there another way to look at it? Or,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and just kind of a little side note here. One of the things I love about the church that we are going to now is they encourage questions.
Nice. What denomination is that?
It's Methodist.
Okay.
Yeah. Cathedral of the Rockies, downtown Boise.
Oh, I've heard good things about that one.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Nice.
Questions are encouraged, and nobody is ostracized, judged, looked down upon, anything if they have trouble believing something.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. Were there any other things that stood out to you, or that you remember, clearly as being kind of problematic from your time at Coal Valley that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, other than the staff not getting the support that was needed from the administration, as and for that matter, as a teacher's aide, I didn't feel like I was really supported by the teacher that I worked with in kindergarten. She's a delightful woman, but she was not there often. It seemed like it was at least twice a month that she would call me or text me in the morning and tell me, that she couldn't make it to work, and that I was going to be the teacher. And I would get there, and there were no lesson plans, and I had to wing it the whole day. And I was never trained as a classroom teacher. And, I did the best I could. And it was really difficult. We had some kids in there who were very, very high maintenance. And it was really difficult. And also that teacher, she every year she said, well, we'll make time to get together so I can kind of give you the background on each student so that I could, not fly blind. Well, it never happened. I never knew the backstory of the kids, except what I was able to, somehow pick up somewhere along the line. So I've always felt like
The the lack of lesson plans, was that because the teacher just kind of had it all in their head, or was it kind of just inconsistent, like what was covered, or you know, to me that sounds weird, but I'm not an educator. I don't know how it works really.
Well, my second husband was an educator, and he said that that was the craziest thing that he had ever heard. If he was a retired elementary school principal,
Wow.
and yeah, he told me that if he had had a teacher working for him that did not leave lesson plans so that any substitute could come in and just run the classroom exactly the way it was supposed to be run, then the teacher had failed. And yeah, it was really, really hard for me. I did the best I could.
So this to me reminds me of a theme that's kind of come up in other matters, and that some people have called it, not in a kind of a strong word, but there's some incompetence in the
Yeah.
school, in that either they're not implementing best practices, or they're hiring people that aren't qualified for their jobs. Like, does that seem fair based on your experience?
Yes. Yes. I I don't know how many teachers at the elementary campus at that time actually had a degree in teaching or had a teaching certificate, but I know that the teacher that I worked with did not. And, some people, just by who they are natural teachers. And that wasn't that teacher. She wasn't a natural teacher. And again, this is kindergarten, and she would sometimes use, this is just an example of where she was kind of falling short. um, she would use big words sometimes with the kindergartners, and I'd see the kids looking at her like, what are you talking about? And so I would say, what does that mean? You said that word and I don't know what it means, so that she would then have to explain it to the kids. And sometimes when she would explain it, it would be more complicated than it had been in the first place.
Hmm.
So then I would jump in and say, "Oh, so are you kind of saying that it's, like this?" And then she'd say, "Yes, exactly." And then I could see the lights turn on for the little kids. They
Hmm.
got it. But sometimes in order for them to get what she was saying, I had to kind of jump in. And I,
Gotcha.
I don't I don't think that's what I was supposed to be doing.
Right. Huh. Why do you think? Oh, do you think this is a shortcoming? Like you said, that your second husband, as a retired elementary school principal, maybe from talking to him or your own experience, do you think this is just a failure by the administration to kind of hold this level, like, standard, or why was there kind of a culture of being unqualified?
Well, I was told that the only requirement to teach was to have a degree. It could be a degree in anything, but if you had a degree, then they could hire you as a teacher. That's why they hired me as a teacher's aide, because I didn't have a degree.
Hmm.
Um, so, and even though I do believe that just by who I am, I do have kind of a natural talent for teaching. I wasn't really able to do that because I didn't have a degree.
Hmm.
And the teacher that I worked with, her degree was in business. And what does that have to do with kindergarten?
Mm-hmm. Right. So I think Coal Valley bills itself as, a superior education. Like, the quality of the education is much higher
Mhm.
than public schools. Um, but hearing you say this, it almost sounds like the bar is much lower for teachers, and therefore the quality would be lower. I mean,
Yeah,
is that what you
I think
think?
I think that's true. Um, at least I think it's true. But prior to that, my granddaughter was little. I mean, she started there in 3rd grade, and her teacher seemed to be really good. Of course, I wasn't in the classroom all the time, so I don't really know. And then she came back for 5th and 6th grade after having to homeschool her for a year and a half, and it seemed like it was good, but I'm thinking that those teachers that she had in 5th and 6th grade may have actually been teachers. I'm not really
Educated
sure.
in that, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's just uneven. You've got some good ones and
Yeah.
some bad ones, and maybe the difference is much larger than at a school that requires training in
Yeah.
that field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be it, because I know I've talked to my friends, and they have kids in a public school, and some teachers are obviously better than others.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just kind of the way it is with humanity.
Yep, for sure. Anything else really come to mind that sticks out in your memories of Coal Valley?
Other than the way they fired me, no.
Tell me that story.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so it was one of the days when the kindergarten teacher that I worked with had told me she wasn't going to be there, and so I showed up on a Monday morning, I believe, and was winging it, and everything went okay. At the end of the day, no, I think this was a time when she was actually gone for a couple days in a row, 2 or 3 days in a row. And the first day was pretty good. The second day, it was the same thing. I had to wing it. And there were 2 little boys in the class that were behavior challenges, to say the least. And the other elementary school teachers, when a child misbehaves, they will put that child out in the hallway for a short period of time as a timeout.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that with these 2 little guys, not at the same time, one at one time and one at another time. And I thought that I had done fine. And then the next morning I got to work, and again, the teacher wasn't there. And waiting for me in the classroom was the principal. And also in the classroom was a mom who sometimes worked as a substitute teacher. And she was there. So the principal said, I need you to come with me to the office. And I did. And she said, we got complaints from the parents of the 2 little boys. And while we are investigating this whole thing, you need to go home. So I went home, and I, had no idea what was happening, what I had done wrong. And then I believe it was the next day, the principal called me into the office. My husband at that time went with me. So it was myself and my husband, the principal, the vice principal, and the superintendent. And when the superintendent came out and asked or said, okay, Sally, you can come on in, my husband also stood up. And the superintendent told him, this is a meeting just between us and Sally. And he said, in the real world, when a employee is being questioned by his or her superiors, they are allowed to have someone with them. And at that point, the superintendent said, well, okay, but this really doesn't concern you. And he said, yes, it does concern me. Sally is my wife, and she's already told me everything that's happened. So, I want to be in on it. So he came in, and that these two, the parents of these two little boys felt that I had been too severe, that my putting them out in the hallway was too severe, and that I was going to have to apologize to the parents. And he said, as long as you do everything that we ask you to do, then everything's going to be just fine. And if the parents push and say that you didn't do something right, then we will ask them to leave the school. And I said, okay. Again, I wanted to keep my job. It was where my granddaughter was going. I was getting a huge tuition discount because of my employment there. So the next day I went in, and it was myself, the principal, the vice principal, and the parents of one of the little boys. So the vice principal and principal, told me in front of the parents what I had done wrong. And then I had to apologize to the parents. And I did. And then the principal said, okay, now we're going to bring in the little boy, and you have to apologize to him in front of all of us. So I did. And the little boy, when I apologized, he climbed up in my lap. I don't think he was upset at all. And then that meeting was over. The little boy left, and the parents left, and I got up to leave. And the principal and vice principal said, oh, no, we want to talk to you. So I said, okay. So I sat back down, and for 30 minutes, they proceeded to twist the words that I had said to the little boy and tell me how my apology wasn't sincere and all these things. And that went on for 30 minutes. And, by the time I left, I was a basket case. And then the following day, I had to do it all over again with the second little boy and his parents. So I did all of that. And again, the parents seemed to be just fine with it. The little boy was fine. Everybody seemed to be fine. And then the family left, and the principal and vice principal this time told me for an hour and 15 minutes how horrible I was, that I should have said this, I should have said that, and they twisted things that I did say and made them mean something that I didn't mean at all. And then my assignment was to go home and make a list of things that I was going to do different in the future. So at this point, I was shaking inside. I was terrified of these people. It was obvious no matter what I did, it wasn't going to be good enough. So my husband and I talked with my granddaughter, and her comment was, I don't want to go to a school that does this kind of thing to you, that treats you like this. So we decided that the next day when I went to the meeting, that my husband would go with me, and I would give them the list of things that, I could do differently, but I would not let them abuse me. I felt at the time like they were psychologically and verbally abusing me. It was horrible. So we went in the next day, my husband and myself, and the principal and vice principal were there, as well as the superintendent. And immediately the principal began to attack me. And I stopped her and I said, wait a minute, I am not going to listen to this anymore. I have done everything you asked me to do, and I'm not going to let you attack me anymore. And she said, well, if you don't do all of this, then we can't move forward. And I told her, I have done everything you asked me to do. So what do you mean by moving forward? And she said, well, in order for you to work here, you have to do everything we're asking you to do. And I remember looking at the superintendent and telling him, I don't want to the principal and the vice principal treat their staff like this. And he said, okay, then you are no longer employed by Coal Valley Christian Schools.
This seems crazy. I mean, what?
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
This seems incredibly unprofessional, and like it seems like something very. It just seems like a miscommunication to start with, but then they like over and over and like bigger and bigger response to something that didn't really deserve a response in the first place.
Exactly.
So it's like, what did they think was the problem? Like what, they were twisting your words, but like, what did they think it was like symbolic? Did they think it was like an indicator of something worse? Like, what was going through their minds, do you think?
I think that well, what they said was that I was abusing the kids, that the kids were afraid of me. And nothing could be further from the truth. Those kids loved me. I mean, they would see me and they'd run up and hug me. And they were thrilled when they got to be with me. Oh, I forgot to tell you this, Cam. After I was let go, I sent out a mass email to every employee of the school that I knew had an email telling them what had happened. And I also sent it to every person on the Board of Education. One person responded from the board, and he said, we will be looking into this. But I never heard anything back.
The state board, or was this like a...
No, the school board, the Coal Valley School Board.
I'm here, like, not only does it just seem to not add up, but like, I'm seeing some like trends here. Is there like that some patterns that from other stories, which is they like to handle conflict with like behind closed doors, like that they didn't want your husband to join. They're like, no, we do this one-on-one. We try to divide and conquer, go behind the closed doors, and then like, neutralize the target, and then when you come out, then there's no more problem. Like it's easier to kind of gang up or bully or influence whichever way an individual than it is a group.
Yes.
And then they don't want any information shared at all. And they really don't respond well to anything public. So you sent out this public email and they probably said, no one respond, which is exactly what they're doing with this Coal Valley Speaks stuff. They're like, no one respond, do not engage. We'll talk to anybody privately, one-on-one, because that's what we do. And that's how we keep everything quiet and nobody knows what's going on to other people. It's like they know they can't get away with their behavior if it was public and transparent, so they just make sure that it's private. Yes,
exactly. In fact, during this whole process, and the whole process took a week, and during this time, I was friends with some of the teachers' aides, right? Mm-hmm. And so they were praying for me. I kept them informed on what was going on. Not every little detail, but I did keep them informed. And one of them, and I don't know who it was to this day, although I suspect that I know, it was actually a teacher, not a teacher's aide, if I'm correct. Excuse me. And I would send out mass texts telling them, what had happened. And when I told Shelley, sorry.
It's okay.
When I told her that I wasn't going to let her abuse me anymore, she pulled out her cell phone and someone had forwarded her my text where I had said that I feel like they are psychologically and verbally abusing me. And when uh, she got out, the superintendent then said that I shouldn't have shared any of that because, and this is a quote, "that is not how we do things around here." So what you're saying is exactly right. And, you know, I knew other people that had worked there. I knew a nurse, I knew a couple teachers, and, you know, they would not be there as a staff member, you know, anymore, but they'd still be there as a parent. And I would see them and I'd say, "What happened? You know, you're not here anymore." And their answer was always, "Well, we just decided it was time, you know, for me to not work here anymore." And every single time I thought,
There's
I don't
more to
think.
that story.
Yeah, yeah. So when I went out, I was not going to go out silently. I wanted everybody to know from my perspective exactly what had happened.
Good for you. Yeah. I just feel like it's very manipulative to do things, you know, how we do things around here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why would you do it like that if you weren't just trying to manipulate everyone?
Right, right.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's very disingenuous. It's very controlling. There's a
yeah,
lot of pressure and there's a lot of, um, you know, power exertion. It's like, no, you can't do this because, you know, you can't say what you really think.
that's
And
right.
yeah, like
That's right.
that
That's
really
right.
bothers me.
Yeah, well, and as a child of God, um, I I believe that as his daughter or her daughter, I have every right to be heard, every right to live my life, and every right to think my thoughts, and every right to share my thoughts with whoever I want to share them with. And these people were my friends, or, you know, so I thought. Well, I think most of them were,
Hmm.
except for one. I think they were my friends. Um, and I had every right to tell them what was going on because they were praying for me.
Right.
So what's wrong with that? It's a Christian school.
It's fine as long as it's not about them, or, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
they're
exactly.
all about the gossip as long as it's not about them.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true. Yes.
wow. Um, so I've got my last few questions I want to ask you, but before that, is there anything else that you kind of have been wanting to share about?
Well, along with that, I mean, I wanted to let you guys know what an effect that had on me
Yeah,
for
please.
for months after that. I continued to have nightmares um, of a heavy-set blonde woman and a tall, dark-haired man being right in my face and yelling and pointing their fingers at me, and it was horrifying. In fact,
No kidding.
yeah, in fact, and I've learned this through the course of my life, that when I am under severe stress, I break out in hives. It's called autoimmune urticaria. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I've heard of the symptoms before.
Yeah, um, yeah. I would break out in hives, and the only way to control it was to take prescribed antihistamines. And when all of this happened, about a month later, which my allergist told me is how long it takes for the body to start um, reacting to itself the way it would, where you would start getting hives. Um, from mid-April until August of
Wow.
2015, I was suffering from these hives, and then I was able to get past it to the point where I wasn't under such severe stress anymore. But I know I wasn't diagnosed, but I know that I was suffering from PTSD.
Yeah.
Not, I mean, I know not to the extent and do, but nevertheless, it was PTSD.
Yeah. No, there, I'm not well read on the subject, but I know that trauma can happen from all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And this verbal and psychological is more than enough to do
Yeah.
that under
Yeah.
the right circumstances. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's where some people have said, like, when I think I used the word trauma in my blog post at one point, or in comments, about it, and people are like, really? Come on, is it really trauma? And I'm like, yes.
Yes.
If you know about anxiety, or if you know about mental health, you know that these things can really have real effects
Yes.
for a long time.
Yep.
Sometimes much longer than a few months,
Yeah.
sometimes years.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Fortunately, I think I was mature enough and had the support of my family, and my faith in God, where I knew that everyone was on my side except the people at the school.
Yeah. Wow. So, given all everything that we've covered, and your background, if Coal Valley administration watches this video, what message do you have for them?
I want Coal Valley Christian School to be what it says it is, a Christian school. Christians should be loving above all else, accepting, not brutal, not judgmental, not exclusive. Christians should be inclusive, including everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. Rich, poor, black, white, gay, straight, Republican, Democrat, what's the other one? Bronco and Vandal.
There you go.
Documented and undocumented.
Good one.
Yeah. Everybody.
And what do you have, like, if you're a student in Coal Valley right now, like, is there a message you want them to hear?
For the students to hear?
Yeah. If you're a student in Coal Valley Christian, is there something that, or a perspective you think might be good for them to hear?
Yeah, God isn't who you're being taught that God is. God is all the things I said before: loving, kind, merciful, full of grace, full of goodness. God is not somebody that brings down the hammer on people. God isn't opposed to people. God isn't opposed to who you are. He isn't opposed to whatever your sexuality is or non-sexuality is. God loves everybody, and he created everybody in his image.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody.
And lastly, if you are a parent that's considering putting your kid in Coal Valley Christian, what do you want them to hear?
Don't.
Pretty simple.
Yeah, don't.
Is there something that would cause you to recommend Coal Valley in the future if they made a change?
If they made a change, if I could see it was a sustained change, not just a change in on paper, but an actual change in behavior. Jesus told us that you'll know people by their fruit. How do you know an apple tree? You see apples on it. How do you know a peach tree? You see peaches, right? Well, how do you know a Christian? You see love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fruit that Christians should be producing. And I'm not saying, that every single Christian is going to have a bumper crop of all of those fruit, every single second of every day, but of each one of those fruit to some extent.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, Sally, that's great. That's everything that I had. Really appreciate you sharing your stories and your perspectives. I think they're great, and I hope we get more parents and past teachers and teachers' aides to do it too.
Yeah, I actually have somebody in mind that I want to mention this to.
Great. Please do. Put them in touch with me.
I will.
All right. Thanks again. You have a great night.
Yes, you too, Ken.
Talk to you later. Yep.
Okay.